Ampire. Hey babies, hey babies, hey babies. Hi everyone, hi everyone, hi everyone. What's up, Callow? What's going on?
Not much, man. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. So I want to do a little. We got an interesting show today. Anita Marks, my buddy from ESPN New York, is going to come on. She's like, she's my Trump. Like I get to bait her. You know, and then she say crazy stuff. It's awesome. It's just incredible. Like I love Giants Week because they probably love talking to us when we're in Crazy Town. Like probably for years they looked forward to like bring those guys on. Let's see what they say. And hopefully things have changed around here. But like the Giants have been this way for like 6-7 years running now. Where I love having her on during Giants Week because there's just no explaining what they're doing, and she takes the bait, full on takes the bait. They're eating animals up there. He takes the bait.
Like, I was going to say, is Daniel Jones eating his neighbor's cat? Is that what's happening?
Could be. So you'll hear her. For those of you watching on YouTube, you will not see that. You'll hear that. So me and Callow for about 20 something minutes today. And then I'm going to air a piece from Booth Review, which is the podcast I do with London Fletcher post the games. So you'll get to hear our take of what happened against Tampa, looking ahead to the Giants. But I want to do a little, we're kind of in a podcast world, but we're still on the radio. I can't end this part of my brain. I want to do a sports radio segment with you, if that's okay.
Oh, boy. All right.
Ask in advance.
All right.
So I think for good reason, people are very upset about what happened the other day around here. I think if you think about it, you're like, well, they lost to a good team who was a playoff team, and it was their debut, and it was on the road. And if you take all of those kind of normal thinking talking points and put them into context, you go, all right, fine, they lost. But I think it was kind of more, especially on defense, the way they lost, where they just literally couldn't stop them. And knowing that like the core tenet of the coaching staff that came in is aggressive play. You're going to like how we get down and all that stuff. And they couldn't stop them. I think that's where some of the freak out was from, and maybe deserved a little bit, some of the freak out. And then we're in the middle of now I'm scared because they're playing the Giants, who were beyond a mess in week one. You like have no good juju going for them, like coming into the season. And we all know, you think we're freaking out today. What's it going to be on Monday if they somehow lose, right? Like, it's going to be bad, right? This is must win week 2 territory. I mean, like that's at least emotionally must win. Like realistically, no, but emotionally, right? Must win week 2 territory. I think for everybody in the area to feel like, all right, like we're fine now. We're fine.
No, I was alluding to this already on Monday and Tuesday. There's only a handful of games on the schedule that I feel like that you have teams that are definitively in the same tier as this team. The Giants are one of them.
Oh, yeah.
If you are going to preach this, hard, what with good people and swarming to the ball and being relentless and apparently a power run game, this is the team you do it against. Like,
yes.
Like I said, there's 4 or 5 games they should definitively be in no matter what shape they're in. This is one of them. No. And I think there's another layer here. It's the first game at home. There's a brand new energy with the team, with the ownership. I know more people going to this game than I've known in like 15 years going to games.
Yeah.
And if you come out and come flat against this team for that game, yeah, people rightfully so are going to freak out, go full Will Ferrell in the locker room. Got to keep your composure. Like people are going to freak out after this if they lose.
Is your debut look the Cosby jersey? Have you gotten it yet?
It didn't come in yet because, you can only go through one company to get jerseys these days. And that one company, is just so fast at shipping everything. So, yeah.
I don't know what takes them so long. I mean, they have these, right?
Week one NFL guys, I would think put all hands on deck. But, what do I know about a company that puts out sports merch? So
obviously 16 teams lost. I'm not going to do this sports radio segment about all 16 of them. I'm only going to pick the ones that I call the freakazoids of week 1, which are the ones that have a reason to freak out. So like you'll notice on this list, while Arizona blew a lead in Buffalo, Are they really freaking out today after losing in Buffalo in week 1? Probably not. Like, you'd have to be kind of off the reservation to be all that upset about something like that. That actually goes back to last year when we got boat raced by the Bills in week 3 and everyone freaked out and we were 2-1. And I remember sitting there going, why is everybody freaking out? They lost to a Super Bowl contender and they're 2-1, but that was the sign of here we go. And with with a team like Arizona, or should they freak out in Carolina? Maybe because it's going to be even worse than they thought.
Yes.
But right. But I'm not going to put them on this list because who thought they were going 10-7 anyway, right? They had to be realistic, but the way they lost, I think, is worth for them to be like, oh God, this is really terrible.
47 points in week 1 against that team. I mean, that's a little much. And then
Last time I checked, that's not Drew Brees. So yeah.
Did you see the Carr taunt to Horn? Did you see that one too?
I saw that. I didn't like that. I didn't like it.
I
think he, of all people, he falls in a category of you're not allowed to taunt people. That's just he's one of those. But then these are always you have no idea what was going on the whole game. That's one of those things where you have unless they mic'd him up and actually show it at some point in time. Like I loved in that quarterback series last year when they showed Crosby and Mahomes going at it the whole game. And then it got context for when you heard a couple of the jabs to one another. So I'm sure Horn was saying stuff to Carr the whole game. But after 47-10, what's he saying to him anyway? And I loved I threw 3 touchdowns.
Yeah. Right.
What are you talking about?
You actually really can't come back from that. But yes, that's what I'm getting at from a Panthers fan. One of your prominent players got toasted by an offense that's not that impressive. Yeah. The freak out of the fan base is warranted. The freak out of the loss is not, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
I'll come back to the Giants at the end. I didn't really put them on the initial list because I kind of put them in this category of similarly with the Cardinals, but they did lose at home to the Vikings badly. So maybe they should. And maybe that could be a sign of, I'm sure they're sitting there going, this might be worse than we thought it was going to be. Because after their offseason, and I really believe that Hard Knocks, I wouldn't call it a mistake. Anita said this, and I thought it was really funny. She goes, they had full editorial control of that. She goes, what didn't we see? She was like, if that's what we saw, them talking about Daniel Jones that way, them nitpicking how much money Saquon Barkley should get, suddenly changing their mind about what they want, trying to draft any quarterback in the top 3, but not wanting Penix or JJ, none of it really added up. She goes, what didn't they show us if that's what they were willing to show us? So, and I agree with that. I agree.
Yeah. That's fair.
Okay. Let's stay in New York. Are the Jets fans going into the darkness? Oh boy. Because not unlike Washington, played a playoff team, in fact, a Super Bowl team, did it on the road, but the Jets, I think if we're being fair here, walked in with expectations of potentially playing them in the Super Bowl. I think if we're all being honest around here, we're hoping for the best and expecting what would be a normal year 1 of transition. Let's see how it goes. That's not what the Jets are supposed to be doing. And I think it's one thing that they lost. They lost in San Francisco. San Francisco's record at home must be astronomical over the last 5 years, and they've been in the Super Bowl multiple times. So there's no shame in that. But they got whooped. And similarly, I had a better feel about the Washington defense going into the season than the offense because I just didn't know what I didn't know about the offense. And with the Jets defense, with Rodgers coming back, and it's Rodgers, still, we haven't seen it. Who believes in Natty Hacks? Let's find out. They had some new pieces. They changed their offensive line. They got a couple more receivers. There's a lot of changes there. And Rodgers is back, hadn't played in a year. So, let's give that a minute and see it, let it breathe, and let's see how that goes. But the defense, well, that's top 5 defense that returned basically intact with the, exception of Bryce Huff, one guy, the whole thing's back, and they got the ball shoved down their throat. And then in the middle of the game, Laura Rutledge is saying Kyle Shanahan said that's what they're going to do, and they did it. And here's a team that in the offseason didn't have their best offensive lineman practice at all because he wanted a contract, didn't have their best receiver at all practice because he wanted a contract, wonky, lost people on defense and looked like they weren't missing a beat and just killed them. So I think they're in the family of freaking out today.
Here's the deal with them, though. And the this was more about the Niners, I think, than the Jets, because the Niners, I think, also were hearing the noise all offseason, everything you just mentioned. Oh, you've got contract disputes. Oh, do you want to pay Purdy? Oh, is Shanahan and Lynch, are they on the hot seat? Oh, ownership doesn't like them because they spend money. And I think they actually just showed up and said, we're still Super Bowl contenders, and we're here to remind you of that. And with the Jets, I think it's a different kind of expectations. Like I talked about this on my show a little bit yesterday. The Jets are just trying to get in the dance. Like they don't need to necessarily win the division. They would love to have a home game, I'm sure. But I think they're the team that says, you know what? Aaron Rodgers hasn't started a full game in 500 plus days. We have a defense that has playmakers on it that can come together. Honestly, if you look at that game too, they held the 49ers to a bunch of field goals. Like that offense is really good. Doing that, if you want to take that into like a positive context, they didn't let them score a bunch of touchdowns. Like
they did run for almost 200 yards on them.
Sure, but they only scored 2 touchdowns in the entire game. I mean, I'm just saying, like, if we're talking about a bend not break defense here paired with Aaron Rodgers, I actually like them in the long run if they kind of figure it out. I'm just saying I don't think they should be freaking out because they need to do what Aaron Rodgers does. That's hit their stride in like week 10 and 12 and then streak into the playoffs. I don't think there's a panic there. They need to stay in striking distance, though. They can't let it get away from them.
I would say this, though, and there's this one part of this, and I agree. Like, I think like, okay, so if they go like 11-6, that's an incredible season, right? They haven't done that in a very long time. One of those 6 losing at San Francisco, when you looked at the schedule, would have seemed totally like,
yes.
Yeah. You know, like, okay, but here's what I would just say about it, because there's a lot of buildup, and he's back and all that stuff. They haven't won a big game in 10 years. So, and this was a total show me game. And,
Sure.
You know, it's week 1. A lot of things are going to change, but that's when it's Baltimore losing week 1 in Kansas City. It's kind of like, yeah, but I know what they're going to do when December rolls around. I don't know what those guys are going to do. And I know their fans don't know what they're going to do. And that's why I think they're in freakazoid zone today. All right. How about this one? The Browns, who were a playoff team a year ago with Flacco Han. Flacco's not there anymore. I agree with your sentiment of Deshaun said he's got to go because he got too popular. Now, Deshaun was awful against Dallas. He has not had singularly a good game since that trade. A lot of it has to do with injuries. And now we've got more very ugly, very serious allegations against him. This is turning into maybe the worst trade in NFL history. They have somehow survived it to actually be competitive, which is weird. They made the playoffs last year. And I think they were convincing themselves, you'll see, he's healthy now. We're going to finally be good. Chubb will come back. We have a top 5 defense. And they got roasted at home. So, all they heard about was Dak getting in his money and the Cowboys are going the wrong way. And they got roasted at home. Like their debut and Tom Brady's debut, all of it was ugly in Cleveland. All of it. So I think they're in full freakazoid zone, and it's probably deserved. And I don't think it helped because I saw on Twitter, someone posted like first caller to Brown's show on Monday, and it was somebody screaming about how Baker Mayfield had a quarterback rating of like 142 and Sean's was 30 or something like that. And then the host, who was very good at performative art, was kind of like, I'm not doing this. I won't do it. You know, usually doing that stuff because it's like, the regret of we got rid of Baker and oh my God, he actually might be good. Trading for this guy who came with the most baggage I've ever heard of for a guaranteed contract, only to see it go completely bust to the point where I don't know that he should be playing anymore. Like, oh my God, they got to be in full freak out zone.
It's also Baker's 4th team since he got released. Like, let's chill out on that one a little bit.
Hey, he's turned out to be pretty good. And it's not just that game the other day. He was good last year for Tampa Bay, like really good.
On Deshaun's thing, did you see Florio's blurb about his contract language? Did you happen to see this? He acquired a paragraph in Deshaun's contract that said he had to disclose any activities or incidents to the Browns that even if they weren't released publicly, he had to tell them about just in case something were to come up. And so now
they had to have a character out. I mean, they had to.
Well, Well, what he's getting at though is because now the timeline of this is 2020, I think, is when the incident.
Yes.
So he said that the Browns, if he didn't, this is, by the way, this is lose-lose for everybody. If he didn't tell them about this, the Browns can then go, you didn't disclose this to us, we could void your contract. That's where everything is hinging right now.
If it's true, it's an allegation, right? You know, like,
sure, no, of course.
I'm not. Don't at me with believe women. I do, but it is an allegation. Okay,
Right.
I don't, and it's an allegation of 4+ years, almost 5 years ago now. So I don't know. You know.
So the other side of this, though, that Twitter started to unpack was, well, if he did disclose it to the Browns and it didn't hit the public, the Browns still made the trade anyways. Like, correct. Oh my God! Like, so there's this part of it as well, and that's why I think the NFL is not putting him on the exempt list yet, because they do know it's just an allegation at this point. But he's saying if it comes out and he didn't disclose it, they can void his contract because he and his agent didn't disclose the incident.
Yes, and out is there. This is why I was saying yesterday, I'm like, I don't think he's going to play again. Like, off of this allegation, off the way he played, I could see them asking him to go away for a little bit. Like, I think that's possible. And then we'll see as things kind of, legally matriculate both on and off the field, because the Browns have to think about the contract. And then obviously we have a court case now that needs to be settled or adjudicated or whatever it is. So we'll see. Like, I think it's very possible he played his last game. Like, I think that's very, very, and a lot of it, unfortunately, in the real world, people, and this is true, it has to do with his play on the field too. Like, it was bad. It was really, really, really bad. I don't see a lot of confidence. I keep seeing these clips of like, his offensive lineman didn't want to help him up and stuff like that. So it's really bad. Anyway, all right, here's another one. And we've been talking about this all summer. Are the Bengals messing up a good thing? They lost at home to New England, who nobody thinks is very good. Although I will say, after seeing their roster and seeing their personnel a little bit at the end of the preseason, and knowing that Gerard Mayo is a very good defensive coach, and that's a carryover. So like, that part wasn't going to change. I just looked at them and I went, I actually think they could have a top 10 defense if they can keep their head in the game, because I think their offense is going to really struggle. And you know how this goes. If by week 8 or 9 that they're in all these games, but they lose all these games and their record isn't very good, can they keep regenerating that and playing with that kind of level of play? But I think personnel wise, I like them. Like, I buy them. I think they're very good on that side of the ball. I just don't think that, especially in that division, good luck keeping up scoring with the Bills, the Dolphins, or the Jets. They're not going to be able to do it. Nobody thinks much of them in that way. But then they go to Cincinnati. They're on the road at a team that supposedly has Super Bowl aspirations. I haven't liked what's going on there for a while. I don't like all the contract stalemates that they have. There's no resolution. Like, the Cowboys resolved. It took a long time, but they did it. The 49ers resolved. It took a long time, but they did it. These guys aren't even doing it. They're like, this is the way it is. Nah, 2024 player. Like, that ain't how it goes. You're just pissing off your best players. And it feels like it's slipping away too soon. That Burrow at his age and those stars at their age on that team, the window should be a little more open than it is. And I feel like they're closing it on themselves by the way that they're acting. And it's manifesting here early. That's a really, 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 really bad sign. I'm actually quite nervous if they lose this weekend. 0-2 desperate team Monday night against Washington. That's a bad setup. They also could go sideways. So, like, this game is shaping up to be very, very different in about a week and a half.
I think this is the team that I think the pendulum can swing both way, the most extreme. Because I also look at this game too. T. Higgins got ruled out. Jamar Chase played, but it was his first action of the summer. Like, they're a team I can peg to actually bounce back. But I'm with you. It's a little wonky. Like, I could see them literally.
Burrow is so good that, it's saved it with Buffalo. Like, I didn't like a lot of the things they did. I understand what they're doing. They're resetting and all that, but he's so good that they're going to be really competitive because of it.
And like, you could still see Chase gets into game shape. Higgins gets healthy. You can show up and beat teams with that, with that offense. I think this is one where the NFL is closer than everyone realizes, and the Patriots were a little bit better than people realize, and the Bengals not really having their offensive weapons was the difference in that game. But I think this is a pendulum swing that could go either way. They could win 10 games because Burrow is a beast. They could also win 5 games because the whole thing goes sideways.
I mean, we have this history, and I'm hoping this will change very, very soon, that when when people lose to the Commanders, they fire people and freak out. Now, I'm hoping things are different now with new regime and new feelings about the organization and where they're going. And I'm hoping that people will look at Jaden Daniels one day and go, all right, so we lost to him, like end, like, what's your point? Like, he's really good, but we're not there yet. And if they're somehow 0-2 and then lose, the freak out's going to be on, because that means they'll be 0-2 at home, and the freak out will be on, and they're going to be a heavy favorite, I think. Actually, we'll have to see what Vegas says about
right.
that. How they perform. Yeah. All right. Trev. They had a lead in Miami. They blew it. They lost. I feel like they're not. Last year was very what's up. And because it's Jacksonville, they don't get a lot of publicity for it. But that was a better roster, better team that ended up with a mediocre record. So, and now here they are, and they played, again, similarly to the Jets thing. Oh, you lost at Miami in week 1? And, like, best offense in the league. Like, what, okay. But it's the way they lost. It's their inability. They're still, Miami's still recovering from those defensive injuries. They still weren't able to generate a ton of offense. Trev got the money. I've yet to see his marquee games. Like, I haven't seen them yet. So that's not a good start for them, because they could have sent a real message, even if they won 20-17 and just got away with it, but got out of there and were like, see, we're good guys, but they didn't. So I think I would go with mild freak out down there, and probably deserved, because they had every opportunity to win that game and they didn't.
Yeah, I think a mild freak out is the way I would go here. It was one of those games where, Washington used to do this all the time, where they'd go up on a good team and you could just kind of feel it creep and slip away. That was one of those games where you're going, man, we were supposed to lose that game, but the way you lost it was heartbreaking. Jacksonville is one of those teams, I don't really understand their direction either. Like, I get why they have Dougie P, but last year was a disappointment. They paid Trev, like, without even thinking about it. Like, I don't know. I don't. The Jags are the Jags. Like, I don't know. They just, I don't want to call them irrelevant, but they're the Wizards. They're mediocre, and I don't know what we're gonna get out of them. Like,
yeah, I kind of look at them, and with Trevor though, and I go, I don't think they should be, and I think that's what's confounding about it. Like,
Bradley Lawrence.
This is the point where they're supposed to win some of these games.
Yeah,
and they're not doing it. They're not doing it. So I don't know.
Trevor Beal.
If Brad would grow his hair out like that. This one is different because it falls in the category of, things happen. And that is Green Bay freaking out because they're going to be without Jordan Love for at least a couple of weeks, and probably longer, maybe closer to a month. They're being very cagey about, how bad his knee actually is. So this one's a little different than those other conversations, which is, hey, what's up with us? I think this is one of those where we go, is our season going to get lost because we lose too many games early? And even when he comes back, is that going to be good enough to catch Detroit? I think is really what the conversation is going to be. They have to survive the next few weeks, and we'll see. So I think that's a different kind of freak out conversation, but I think it's worth having, because the way they finished the season, I think I called them to go to the Super Bowl. I'm like, watch out. I think Jordan Love's going to take off. Without him, I don't love the replacements or the options. And if they go with Malik Willis, he's only been there a few weeks. So that could be rough.
This one reminds me of the Cowboys the last couple of years, where I would say to you, Dak gets hurt. Why do they not invest in a backup? And the fact that Green Bay just kind of overlooked that and then thinks that Malik Willis is going to be the solution there. Once again, I don't understand it. When you're a contender, why you don't get yourself a legitimate veteran, I just will never really understand it. And if it is Willis, good luck with that. Good luck with that. I will say this, though. Funny enough, the Packers remind me a little bit of the Jets. They just need to get in the dance, though. Like, they beat Dallas on the road as a wild card last year. Like,
that organization, though, unlike the Jets, has done it many times.
True. Yeah, exactly. So I'm just saying, like, they're also one that they probably look at the division and go, okay, the Vikings won, but we're not worried about them. The Bears squeaked by the Titans. Maybe they like their chances a little bit more to survive the first month of the season because of their division, too.
All right, last one. The Falcons. Falcons go get Kirk, draft Penix anyway with a top 10 pick. Got a lot of stud offensive players. They scored 10 points at home. Now, it's Pittsburgh who does this to people. Still, Kirk had a couple of bad picks. Uh-oh. You know, the trouble really with drafting Penix is your long-term visioning plan. You involve the fan base in a conversation of who should play if things like this happen. Penix was good enough in the preseason in a small subset of plays that they said, we're good. He doesn't have to play anymore. So they basically invited an unusual quarterback controversy on themselves. And if they're playing the Eagles this week on Monday Night Football. If they lose, if they have trouble scoring again, that conversation is going to start nationally. And then Tuesday, when they're the only game, Stephen A. Smith is going to scream that Michael Penix should be starting for them. And it's going to go sideways fast. So we'll see, Falcons, how you do.
I'm not buying its window dressing because I am doing the kind of the same thing we're doing here in Washington. I think the Steelers, they do this against teams. Kirk had a back-breaking interception. I don't know if you were watching the game all the way up until that point. Like, he had a back-breaking, I think it was fourth quarter interception, down by 8, whatever. And I don't know. I'm not calling it window dressing yet because I like all of their offensive skill positions. I will say this, though. They're kind of reminding me of that team of every year we're looking at them going, oh, yeah, they'll be better this year. And now I think there just has to be a point where we stop buying into them because Pitts and all of these skill position players and Bijan, like, I think at some point we just need to stop like hyping them up because maybe they just are who they are. I will say I don't see Kirk staying bad this whole time, though. Like, Kirk's an up and down quarterback. It was game one in a new offense, coming off a major injury. I'm not panicking yet for them. I think there's enough there that they can still win that division and be fine.
We'll talk about for those of you on radio or the podcast, we'll talk about how freaked the Giants are next with Anita Marks from ESPN New York. Bram watch the show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. Let me welcome in my friend from ESPN New York, Anita Marks, as we get set for yet another Commanders-Giants matchup. Hey, Anita, how are you?
I'm better than the Giants.
Hey, we're suffering down here too.
Is that saying a lot, Bram?
Hey, we're suffering down here too. That was a rough start for Washington too. So somebody's going to get right this weekend. That's for sure.
Here's the thing: a lot more optimism around your team and the quarterback that Washington just drafted than Daniel Jones. I mean, you know, it's one thing to lose week one. It's another to lose in the same fashion that you've seen your quarterback lose for 6 straight years. And, you know, there's no, we know what the ceiling is, Bram, right? Like,
yeah.
You know, you've got, you know, Washington, the Commanders, they've got a young, exciting, explosive quarterback that they were able to draft. Granted, is he going to go through some growing pains this season? Absolutely. But at least you don't even know what the ceiling is, and the ceiling is pretty exciting. For Giants fans, they know what the ceiling is, and they're going to have to endure it yet again another season. So just, you know, night and day. I'm sure there's Giants fans that would rather be in the Commanders situation. That's for sure.
All right, let me go back to the offseason. They were the subject of Hard Knocks, and I watched it. And I got to tell you, Anita, like, I don't think their front office came off looking very well after the decisions that were made. Like, what was the reaction in New York to Joe Shane and all the decisions that were made in the offseason?
I would say that probably 95% of the people here agree with you. I mean, you know, it's really interesting, you know, and I know I'm not telling your listeners anything they don't know. Like, the Giants organization, very, like, you know, part of, you know, been around football for a long time. Like, the historians of football know the Mara family and how far back they go. And so the Giants, they always seem to get a bye around week 8 or week 9. You know what I mean? Like, they haven't wanted to do Hard Knocks, so they haven't had to do it. So they said, okay, well, maybe what we'll do is we'll do Hard Knocks, but different than in the season. We'll do Hard Knocks in the off season. This will be good for us. Well, I honestly feel that it turned around, and I think it bit them in the butt, because this was a horrible look. This was an absolute horrible look for your front office. I don't think many people walked away from watching Hard Knocks thinking that Joe Shane is in control of anything or knows what he's doing. It was really, really a very, I'm trying to think, elementary. I'm expecting more, a better grip on things, more, dare I say, machismo. He calls, or he heads over to the New England Patriots box and, hey, listen, if you guys are thinking of trading that number 3 pick, make sure you call us, okay? Okay, thank you, bye. Okay, and then the whole thing with Saquon Barkley. Hey, before you agree to anything with anyone, please make sure you circle back with us, okay? So, what is that? What is that? We just, like me, the media here, the fan base, Bram, not a good look at all. The perception is that, that Dable is in over his head, and regardless, okay, maybe the Patriots weren't willing to trade you that number 3 pick. It's evident now you needed to draft a quarterback. Whether you got the number 3 pick or not, I mean, heck, make a gamble on Bo Nix. Do something, because it's evident, Daniel Jones is not the answer, and now it's going to be another year of this.
So I want to go back. Let me go back to Barkley for a minute specifically. Okay, he's their best player. He wants to be there. The money he seemingly is asking for is not astronomically different than what they were offering him. They're taking a stand on him, and then he goes, and then they go and spend a ton of money on other people's players. Like, I can't figure out their plan or what they value when I watched this.
Yeah, I mean, I think the perception, especially after watching Hard Knocks, is that the Giants really didn't feel that in the heart of all hearts that Barkley truly wanted to continue to be a Giant. And also, I think they felt that his camp may have been utilizing the Giants to up their ante with the Eagles or the Bears or whatever teams were involved and interested in Barkley. I don't know about you, but if my owner who has hired me says to me, if I lose Barkley to the Philadelphia Eagles, I'm not going to sleep well at night.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, Bram. I'm doing everything I can to make sure he doesn't go to the Eagles, and I'll pay extra money for him to come back and be a part of our team. So that was really perplexing to me. Really the decisions and the choices that they have made on this, at the end of the day, and after looking at what we saw in week 1, and I am the biggest Daniel Jones supporter, Bram, and I have been. The dude's been sold a bag of lemons every year that he's been here in New York, and it's evident this year. He was under duress all day long. And oh, by the way, the 4 or 5 good passes that he was able to get off were dropped. But yet, it's all Daniel Jones's fault. He sucks. He's horrible. He's not worthy of being a starting quarterback in the NFL, which, by the way, I disagree with. He is mentally shot, because now, going on his 6th season, the Giants have failed him in getting a good to great offensive line to give him time to complete a pass, or at least have time in the pocket. Here we are, we're talking about how great Sam Darnold and the Vikings looked against the Giants. Well, Sam Darnold had all day, Bram. He had all day. He's playing behind a top 5 offensive line, and oh, by the way, is working with arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL. in Justin Jefferson. So you can't sit back and go, oh man, look at how great Sam Darnold is, that much better of a quarterback than Daniel Jones. No, it's just Sam Darnold has found a better home and a better opportunity to play quarterback with Minnesota Vikings than Jones has in 6 years with the Giants. Really, at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to it. And now what's really scary is that now Daniel Jones may be mentally affected and from this, where he might never get his mojo or his rhythm or his timing back because he's been under duress his entire career here with the Giants, Bram. This really, the Giants really screwed Daniel Jones up. I hope the majority of real, true football, knowledgeable football people understand that.
You know, here's the other part too. Like, my producer and I were talking about this for like weeks during the Hard Knocks thing. Like, when you watch this, it sounds like a sports radio segment, but they're the front office of the team talking about the players out loud, like me and you are talking about them, but our opinions don't matter and theirs do. And that was the most amazing part of it. Like, how in the world could they move forward with him as the quarterback after basically saying to anybody who would listen, we'd like to upgrade and not have him on the team any longer? It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, listen, and this is a conversation and a debate that I have on my radio show all the time, you know, and that is, you know, Daniel's only human. You know, what folks out there, if you're listening, what if you know your boss just doesn't think you're good enough? What if your boss is always out there trying to find your replacement because they just don't think you're good enough? You know, I'm sure there are people out there going, well, then I'll go find another job, or, you know, I'll only try harder. Well, okay, that's you. But now you're working in an environment where there are 10 other people on the field that how they perform affects how you look and how you can perform. So Daniel's not going out there going, oh, okay, I'll show him. Well, dude needs some time behind that offensive line in order to really show what he can do, and he's not getting it. Dude needs some wide receivers outside of a very hyped up Malik Neighbors so he can get some wide receivers who are going to catch some balls and give him some yards after the catch. He doesn't have either. So, you know, mentally, it's just imagine, Bram, how difficult that's got to be, right? If like your boss is saying, man, we've got to replace Bram, you know, I don't think he's fitting the bill, but yet you've got horrible producers, you've got horrible equipment, and you're trying to do everything you can to put together a great radio show, but everything that entails sucks. It's got to be uber frustrating. I tell people on my radio show all the time, you're talking about how the Giants need to get rid of Daniel Jones. How about Daniel Jones needs to get rid of the Giants? How about that for a minute? How about Daniel Jones going, you know what? Damn, look at Sam Darnold. He was seeing ghosts here in New York with the Jets. He spends some time in San Francisco learning behind Purdy and working with Kyle Shanahan, and then has a great opportunity to work in a great system behind a top 5 offensive line and a lot of talent in Minnesota. And he had one of the best QB ratings in week 1. What if you're, you know, why? It's not so much about that. What about Daniel Jones going, you know what? I want out of here. Yeah. These people don't know what they're doing. And on Hard Knocks, they're talking about how they don't want me. Yeah. Hell with this. I want out. Yeah. How about that? Right?
It was such a bad look. I mean, it was just, I was so thankful they gave the access, but I don't think it was like they didn't even realize that everybody who's watching this is going, what are you people doing? It was crazy. It was like, we think we're the smartest people in the room, and everybody on the outside is going, you do? Like, because this doesn't read that way.
Here's another one for you, Bram. The Giants had editorial control. So just imagine so Bram, imagine what we didn't see. Imagine what we didn't see. This is what the Giants allowed us to see. Imagine what we did not see, my friend.
That's amazing. All right, let me ask you one more before I let you go, because I want to get to the other side of the ball real quick. The strength of that team with Thibodeau, Lawrence, and now Brian Burns. And I saw this clip, and it's just a clip on Twitter, but I guess after the first game, Thibodeau was real salty with, I guess, some reporters that were asking about why didn't the defensive line do this or do that. Is there a problem over there, too, now on that side of the ball?
Well, when you look at time of possession, the Minnesota Vikings had the ball almost 6 more minutes than the Giants. And that's a real big key when you talk about, as great as this defense could be, if they're out there on the field because Daniel Jones and the offense can't move the chains and they're going 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, A, they're tired, and B, again, they went up against top 5 offensive line in the NFL, the Minnesota Vikings are sporting. So I think those two things combined, and I would imagine that also this defense this team is tired of the, Giants suck, Daniel Jones suck narrative. I mean, they've got to be exhausted by it. So and on top of that, the secondary very well could be the worst secondary in the NFL, Bram. So so much really at the end of the day, the silver lining, there's 2 maybe. The 2 silver linings with this very dark cloud here in East Rutherford, New York, is very hefty expectations for Malik Neighbors and a defensive line, a front 4, a front 7 that's going to put enough pressure on a team that will not expose the secondary. It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. Anita, as always,
I'm sure they're uber frustrated as well, Bram.
Yeah. Someone's going to get right this weekend, and trust me, Washington's debut was not great, but there's good vibes here. We didn't walk into the season with bad vibes, which is what it feels like is what was going on with New York. All right, Anita, as always, it is a pleasure having you on. Thanks for coming on today. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Enjoy the game on Sunday.
All right, be right back. Bram Weiss the Show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. Each and every week during the season, I get to catch up with my man London Fletcher, who I call the games with, along with Logan Paulson. And through the Commanders, we do a show the day after every game called Booth Review. And here is a sample of that podcast. All right, let me just start with the overarching theme. Well, I want to go through the game with you, but the overarching theme of it's one game, right? There's just no chance that in your career you didn't have one of these. So, help us out here a little bit. This doesn't mean it's the end of the world, right? Because you've lived through something like this before.
Absolutely. I've had my more than my fair share of 0-1 starts, even 0-2 starts in my career. And I think about back to 2012 season. We started that season like 4-6. 4-6, and then at one point, you're like, hey, Coach Shanahan tells the media, hey, we're gonna be evaluating everybody, and the media thought he was getting thrown in the towel and, kind of looking forward to next season. But it actually kind of lit a fire under a lot of us and said, hey, it's time to really step up our game. You all know how that 2012 season ended. We go on a 6-game win streak, playing Dallas, last game of the season, Sunday Night Football, for the division championship, division crown at FedEx back then. Win that game, win the division, end up hosting a playoff game. So don't panic. It's just one game. And even, I will say this, even on the flip side, had we won that game, you still can't get too high and be all of a sudden like, hey, we're bound for the Super Bowl. It's a long season. There's a lot of football left to be played. I've already broken down and watched the offense completely through. I'm more than halfway through the defense, and I'll go back and see it several more times. And I tell you this, I came away from the game a little bit more encouraged from an offensive standpoint and even from a defensive standpoint, because, and Jaden Daniels mentioned this when you and I interviewed him after the game. He talked about we left a lot of things out there.
Yeah.
And when you go back and see it, Bram, he's true. That was absolutely correct. There were a lot of plays left on that field in Tampa Bay. They'll get those things corrected defensively. It's not a big fix type thing that we got to go through. I'm encouraged, man. I'm still on board.
Jaden's least of my worries, actually. I'm going to go through the offense with you. He's least of my worries after what happened yesterday. There's other things that are more concerning. I wanted to give you one story from when I covered the team, and this is like 20-something years ago. Marty Schottenheimer came here. It started 0-5, okay? 0-5. The scores were terrible, right? They were getting blown out. It looked terrible. It was very similar in messaging to what we're getting with Dan Quinn right now, in that you're going to like the way we play. It's going to be very physical. We're going to be very tough. And the first 5 games went completely sideways, and it completely flipped in the middle of the season, and they ended up going 8-3. And honestly, if you ask anybody that covered the team at the time, one of the big mistakes the previous owner made was firing Marty Schottenheimer after that first year, because it looked like it was going in a very different direction. So I've seen this before too, not obviously from your standpoint, but I've seen this before too in real time. One game doesn't mean anything. And the other thing I want to say about Tampa Bay, because they're a good example of this too, go look at their record in the first half of the season. They didn't actually turn around and become a playoff team last year until the middle of the season, and that's when and Green Bay's another good example of it, that took off, and they're in this kind of launching pad place. They got their whole team back off of a playoff season. So we're in 2 different spaces here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think part of kind of we have to understand there was so much excitement about this offseason, bringing in Dan Quinn, the new ownership group finally having a full kind of offseason to put things together, hiring Adam Peters, Dan Quinn, getting the free agents we brought in, the drafting Jaden Daniels. So there was a tremendous amount of excitement and anticipation. You saw all the Commanders fans in Tampa Bay, man. It was a beautiful thing seeing all of our fans that made that trip. Some of them, flew from I met one fan, he flew as far as he came from the UK.
Wales. Wales.
Yeah, as we were leaving. So we had fans from all over the world that came to see us play. And we would have loved to gotten off to a better start and won that game just to continue that excitement. But again, after looking at the tape, I'm still encouraged, and I feel like we will get and be the type of team we want to be.
So Tampa reminds me a little bit of what Detroit was a year ago, where 2 years ago, Detroit had this new staff, new team, new chemistry, said it was going to turn a corner, did in that next year, 2023. Tampa feels similar to me, where they turned a corner in the middle of the season. Baker Mayfield, and whatever go-around this is for him, has really found himself. We'll talk about him in a minute. He was outstanding yesterday against the defense, and they are looking like the type of team that is heading up in that kind of upward trajectory. And it was strange, because like going into week 1, I was trying to sell myself, like, or maybe you too, look, maybe this is the right time to catch them. They don't know what we're going to do. We could catch them off guard. They can't scout us. We haven't shown anything. At the same time, you go on the other side and you go, 44 of their 53 players were either drafted or undrafted free agents. That is a cohesive team. That's a team that Adam Peters and Dan Quinn want to have here in 2 years. They're ready to take off. And if Baker's going to play like that with the weapons that they have and the defensive scheme that they organized, again, they're dangerous. So as it turns out, it's another reason why I think everybody needs to chill out, calm down. Washington played a really good, high-level playoff team yesterday.
Right. A team that you've mentioned several times in leading up to this game. I mentioned multiple times. Playoff game, and went into Detroit and had a game in the fourth quarter. So I think Tampa doesn't really get the type of respect around the league that it probably deserves, especially if Baker plays like he played yesterday. I grew up in Cleveland. I remember Baker in Cleveland during those days. Man, that was the most impressive that I've seen. I was like, shoot, if he played like this in Cleveland, he would still be in Cleveland. But I could only imagine what it's like in DC, the sports talk radio, all the different fans in the, the sky is falling and all that type of thing, man. Especially when they talk, as we get into the conversation about defense. I mean, calm down, pump your brakes. We'll be fine.
All right, that'll do it for today. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Bram Washington Show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.